Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Taylor, and you are listening to episode 57 of the Trauma Dump podcast. Thank you so much for joining Syran Warner over
here at the
on
Trauma Dump
TikTok.
podcast. We seek to answer the question: What is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? This week we'll be discussing the topic of psychological manipulation. Free Melissa Parker, with our very special guest of the week, Syran Warner. FREEMELISSA Remember, if you'd like to share on the show, please message us in our Discord in the podcast participants channel along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And just a quick disclaimer before we start, I am not a licensed health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have resources in our descriptions. The topics discussed here are for mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. And hey, if you're liking the Trauma Dump podcast, please hit that like button. Click subscribe so you can get notifications every time we post new episodes, which we have new episodes out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're liking this podcast so much, please rate the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and please share the podcast with your friends. All right, let's get into this episode. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Super nice to talk to you.
Oh, it's super nice to have you on. So introduce yourself to all of us. Who are you? Where can we find you?
So I'm a journalist, and I exclusively cover cults. One of the cults I cover calls me the cult hunter. So you can find me like on TikTok at the cult hunter, or on Free Melissa Parker on Instagram, and Syran Warner on YouTube. I got too many handles, so they should all be the same.
Hi, I get that. I have like my name is my handle on like my personal is like Grace Lauren Taylor. And then I have the Trauma Dump podcast. And then I have my little Gracelets business. And my friends are like, stop replying to me on your business accounts. I'm like, sorry. Like I'll like swipe up on their stories and be like, you look so great, Queen. I was like, thanks, the Trauma Dump podcast. It's like, social media is a riot. So it's really great to have you here, Syran. Are you comfortable with discussing your personal experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. That was my alarm. Yeah, I'm comfortable discussing kind of, I guess, what I see in the field and as well as my own personal experiences.
Okay, good. Just to make sure that I'm not crossing any of your boundaries and respecting your experiences, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. We can also like redirect and you'd be like, oh, Grace, edit that out. I don't want that in there. I can always edit. That's why that I pre-record these episodes. So if you ever say like someone's name or an address or something that you're like, never mind, I don't want that in there.
No, I get
can
it.
edit those out. Beautiful. So we're talking about cults. I want to first dive into, your own background in it, because you said you're a journalist. What got you interested in cults in the first place?
I honestly I didn't really have any interest in cults. I mean, I think I read Helter Skelter when I was like in like middle school or some age. I was too young to understand what was going on. And I didn't really know anything about the phenomenon. And then I was working on a story that I started working on in 2016 for a paper, and I ran into this cult along the way. I ended up talking to this person in this group for like she was like my primary source on a story, and that kind of like she kind of twisted me around and pointed me in the wrong direction on things. And then when I started hearing like when I started hearing what was actually going on, and realized that like I myself like had was so confident that I knew what was going on and didn't, that like this was it was profound.
Mm.
um and I also realized, there were all these terrible things that were being hidden by the group, and that I was kind of like participating in the like hiding this stuff by not publishing any of it. And during the pandemic, when there was a lot of time to think about this stuff, I started a website. The paper I used to work for folded, um, and I've just kind of been doing it ever since. Like I wasn't gonna do it for more than a year because I didn't want people to think I was crazy, and now this is just who I am.
I love that though. That's so interesting that you felt almost like called out maybe in a way in like your own conscious of like I know these things, and if I don't speak out there could be repercussions. And I think it's really interesting that, oh, it's just who I am now. It's like this was just a little hobby, just maybe something to do during COVID. And now this is has become
This
so
is
much
real
more.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane because I started the podcast like 2 years ago. I first started it just like for fun and to start to, process and heal myself. And it has become so much more. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm really excited about learning about cults. So, in your own words,
I
what
guess,
is a cult? What is a cult?
well, a cult is like a system, like a high control system where there's this venerated leadership. It's a group that pulls people towards its gravity and pushes them away from the healthy relationships they have in life. Like there are a lot of components. There are a lot of like academic components. If you read like Alexandra Stain, who's a social psychologist that deals with she was in a cult for a decade, and she's written the academic stuff that I think is really poignant, or just like accurate, I guess. Like all my definitions and stuff come from her. But I would say, like, just to back up though, like it's also something in my experience, and it sounds like, in your experience, like I had this thing that was like, I was, it's sort of in a dark place when I realized that, like, not like, I was just like, I was like crying on the floor when I realized I'd been had as badly as I'd been had, like in real life. And I was just like, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something about this.
Mm.
I don't know what it is. And I think like sometimes these creative projects like can be cathartic.
Oh yeah, 100%. And my grandmother likes to call it transmuting pain into purpose. And I really want to put it on a t-shirt because I think it's so brilliant. And I talk to my guests all the time. I'm like, what is transmuting pain into purpose for you? That's one of like the key questions I ask. And I'll just ask it up front for you. What is that for you?
I guess to me, like I do things sort of my own in my own way. Sometimes the things do are like, sometimes the stuff I put out is like comical, but it does like it always comes back to this like the reality that these like that what's going on in these groups that I'm sort of uncovering, because I always cover, these small groups that haven't really received attention elsewhere. And that stuff, like I talk to these people like on the phone. I some of the survivors of these cults are like really good friends of mine at this point. Like especially in the cults that I think you found my video on, which was about Linda McGillis and Profundity Yours. Like some of those ladies from Profundity are like, if I have like a tough decision to make, I'll call these like former cult members, and they're actually like way wiser than anybody gives them credit for. But
Yeah.
it is a transmuting pain into something with purpose. I think it is I think you could say that about a lot of things, a lot of like albums or like music, there's it seems to be to me that it's obvious that it's like part of kind of the human condition, or that if it isn't, like it does produce like really interesting stuff.
Hmm. That's very true. And yes, I did find you from the whatever it's called.
Profundity.
Profundity yours. That's such an interesting name, but
It's hilarious name. I mean, that is that's funny. Like profundity yours. Here is like the profound thing that's going to happen in your life, and it's like, yeah, like trailer park new age stuff.
Oy. What are
But
some
I guess like why I wanted to talk to you for this is that story, the profundity yours story, is really about sort of trauma and generational trauma. Um, and it's important to have a discussion. I was really happy that video did so well because it does kind of it's a TikTok, so it's 2 minutes long, but it does have something to say in there about like this woman is like this is a traumatized person who's feels safe traumatizing other people, and her thing is that she's like a trauma therapist. Like that's how she sort of bills herself. She says that she has a degree in psychology and that she can help these people, and it's like the exact opposite of the Trauma Dump podcast.
mm, the antithesis? Oy. Yeah, I watched that video several times and I showed it to my fiance and he was like, "This is some like OG BuzzFeed like going into like I don't know." He was really interested. He's like, "This should be like a long series of you essentially go into a cult and learn about the cult and maybe dissect the cult." And he thought it would be like a great like full length. He was like, I could watch like an hour of this. He was really into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the fact is like really scary stuff happens in profundity, like dosing people with mushrooms and then like getting them to hand over millions of dollars, and crazy shit happens in profundity. I've also I talked to a guy in prison who was a former member of this group. There's dark stuff, but on the surface of it is that like Linda is like the reason I've been able to watch some of it is that Linda is really interesting. She's kind of like built for TV. Like she would have like a TLC documentary or like a TLC show, like what they did with the family with a million kids.
The
Like they
Duggars.
yeah, it would be something like that. Like this like here's what's going on in the life of Linda. If it wasn't so dark, it would be something like that. But yeah, I think she's built for television. She should be on TV.
Hmm. And like she has a giant personality. I get that. I think a lot of people that have gone through significant trauma create a character or a caricature of themselves and almost use it as a mask to draw people in or to keep people away. It's something that I have been, grappling with my own, journey because I have gone through significant trauma. That's why I have my podcast, like to talk about it. But I was talking with one of my best friends, Abby, and I was having a really depressed day yesterday. It was not good. I was sad, so sad, and I was crying. And we were supposed to hang out, and then another friend was supposed to come over, and I canceled on both of them. And she was like, "Why do you feel like you can't spend time with us unless you're bubbly, happy go lucky Grace?" And I was like, "Well, I was told a lot growing up that no one wants to be around a sad person. Like no one wants to be around, someone going through it. And she's like, well, that's not true, first of all. And secondly, your value is not in what you're giving to other people. Your value is just inherent. Like our interactions don't always have to be positive ones for them to be, healthy interactions. And that made me think, it's like, what in my brain tells me, the traumatized part of me tells me that if I'm sad, I need to isolate and keep away from everybody who loves me. Maybe keep up this like facade of, everything's okay. I'm like the fun person to be around. And I think cults do a similar thing where they show people on the outside, oh, this is fun, it's welcoming, it's healing. This is where we all know each other. Don't you want to be known? And once you're like in it, that's when the dark side comes out and they like keep you in because they're like, oh, but we know you, we love you, and we see your dark side. We see all the side that you don't want the rest of the world to see. So why would you leave? Why would you betray us? Why would you betray our loyalty? And I I think I struggle with that like form of manipulation because in my brain, uh, if I just keep people, at arm's length and don't let them see the messed up parts of me, then I'm not going to hurt them if they were to see the messed up parts of me because, I was raised by a narcissist. My mother is a narcissist. She is diagnosed. It isn't just me saying, oh, my mom's a narcissist. She is one. And so I think that's like a whole nother level is like being raised by a narcissist is like almost a cult within its own. Like the family dynamic is also very cult like. Are you resonating with anything that I'm
Yeah,
saying?
absolutely. And I was just gonna say, like, I guess I recognize things a little bit better as I get older. As like I'll react to something and I'll be like, and it's kind of like strange or whatever, and it's like, oh, I'll process it and be like, oh, this is like a trauma response that I'm
Mm.
having or whatever. Or I have these times too where I'm like, I need serious, like I need to be by myself. Because I know if I'm going to go out there into like social land, like I'm fine at home, like with my partner, but in the like to go out into something where I'm just dealing with something, that's something. I mean, you're also right too. Another thing you touched on is just like the sort of like when you're around narcissists, you get gaslit all the time. Like I was just working on something right before we got on the call about this guy who made accusations about a cult and then they just set him on fire, like with all like this crazy gaslighting where it's like he's the gross sexual person and he's the one who abuses kids, not us. And they were like almost successful doing that, like turning this guy into this like pedophile person they wanted him to be. And so I see that too is like I think something that's unique about cult stories is like you have these people that kind of get out of situations that seem normal and then they realize like there's an incredible amount of fear involved and I think there's an incredible amount of trauma involved, but a lot of like the messaging from the group is always like this is the exact opposite of what you're saying it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, but you see a lot of like former cult members like who really are unsure about how to process their feelings because they're unsure of themselves, they're unsure of their own recollections because they've been like fucked with by a narcissist so bad.
Yeah. What are some common trauma responses that you've observed in former cult members?
Um, I would say like the thing I see a lot is like people sort of, laughing about something horrific that happened to them, and it's like, or and making it like, yeah, and then this terrible thing happened, and I'm kind of like, whoa, but I want to like be fully supportive of like like these the people that I talk to, the subjects in my stories, and let them know that this whatever happened to you, like that is not like it's not your fault, first of all, and like this is this there's a pattern to this. Like there's a like if you step back and you look at these groups that we wind up in cult stories, like they kind of do the same things to people, and they take away their support networks. Like don't talk to your friends anymore because like they don't get it. Like they actually like have it, they have it all wrong. Or you'll have like a healthy relationship with a relative that's like questioning the group that you joined, and those people always get pushed away.
Mm.
Like the so it sort of like leaves you out there really exposed to whatever they want you to put you through.
Yeah. Yeah. I relate to that. And I just want to ask you this question. Do you think there's any difference between a cult and a religion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I do. Although like sometimes like I was raised Catholic, and the Catholic religion, like that I'm used to, is that I sort of grew up with thinking was, this is just a thing everybody does. I thought, this is like there's an element to it where there's so many members that, and a lot of the really like the bad stuff, that like the really toxic shit gets taken out by society. Like, um, the best example is like polyamor, like the polygamy with Mormonism. Like at a certain point, the government is just like, hey, you guys can't do this anymore. Like, and that happens as society becomes more progressive and liberal. It's insane to have to point this out in the world that we're living in right now, but society does become more liberal over time. Um, and I see like, but this Easter, I went to, there's a huge like giant Catholic church, this basilica downtown, and I went to the Easter service, and I had just been like I had just gone to a cult service that was pretty weird, and the Catholic mass was like, it blew my mind how strange it was. Like, and I was like, I can't believe how many rituals and what goes on in this. But that is like I don't think religion is bad for people. I would never say that. And I think that there is like we all have like a want to like know what's going on beyond ourselves. We all kind of feel like there is maybe something like more to this.
Mm.
And that is, I totally respect that. It's just that it gets abused like so frequently. But I would say like I've heard of a couple Jewish Orthodox cults, but on the whole, like you don't see that many Jewish cults because of the way the system is. Like there are religions that are like more prone to cult material, and a huge part of it is that Jesus is supposed to return again someday, and like and we're not going to know that he's Jesus, and people are going to say that he's not Jesus. Like all that shit's in the Bible, and that is like I mean that's like you have this American nation, and people are like, man, why are there so many cults in America? And it's like, well, we have like absolute religious freedom, and like the dominant religion is this one where there's going to be a Messiah.
Yeah.
Like, but there's also like cults aren't specifically religious. Like Nexium is probably the best example. Like the Keith Raniere one, where he was like putting his initials on like people's private parts, like scarring them.
Yeah.
And it
I
was like
saw
that
that.
was like kind of like a self-help, or like Scientology says it's a religion, so they don't have to pay taxes, but in reality, it's like kind of like a self-help program. Um, like it's not inherently religious, but there is something religion-like about it, where I see like all cults have this thing that this bigger purpose that is like the answer to everything. It's the answer to all your problems. Like the person in charge knows more about this than anybody else on the planet. That's always the case. So yeah, I see. I don't want to give people the idea though, because I'm kind of like a kooky, like I'm into some of the new age stuff. And there is religious. I have had profound moments talking to people. There's things in my life that are hard to explain. Everybody's life is hard to explain. Why did this happen or whatever? And if there, we want there to be like a bigger answer. Whether or not there is, I don't know. But that's like it's kind of a natural thing that we just do as people, because like our lives, like it's really difficult to explain like the intelligent life and the civilizations we live in.
I agree with that. I really do. The reason why I brought up that question is because I have been deconstructing from religion kind of as a whole for the last probably 2, 3 years. My fiance is an atheist, and I was raised a Baptist, Bible thumping Baptist, Southern
I've been to a
Baptist in
Baptist church before,
Texas.
yeah.
It's get up, sit down, get up, sit down. Like, oh my goodness. And so that's how I was raised. And I'm still trying to figure out what I believe. And I think the one thing that I missed from like organized religion was community. I missed that a lot. And I think that's another reason why a lot of people who I've noticed start to deconstruct somehow get interested in cults and in like communities and figuring things out. And one of my best friends, again, like she was researching, okay, what is a religion? Like, what are like what's the definition of a religion? What are the tax breaks for? Like, why do we have organized religions and stuff like that? And she met a guy who's essentially starting a cult. Like, and she was just intrigued. She just wanted to know what was going on. What are you doing, dude? What's going on? And he essentially drugs, his congregation with mushrooms. And uh like he started the whole practice to help people recover from trauma with mushrooms. And then these people, like, I guess he liked the fact that people were coming to him, and he liked being up on a pedestal essentially. And it went from, oh, like me and my bros just doing mushrooms to feel things, to now he's like creating, give me money for this experience, and oh, let's make it a religion so we don't have to pay taxes. And I was the one that, because she was intrigued by it, and she was like, yeah, I think I might, try to help them on the legal side, logistics. And I was like, baby, no, no, get away as
Yeah,
far as
I
you
mean,
can.
I would say like I don't have any problem with like experimental therapies that are done responsibly. Like it has been like the Supreme Court just kind of screwed things up, or some governing body just kind of screwed things up with MDMA being able to like be used in therapy, which I think like if it's done responsibly, it should. Maybe our society like isn't there yet, but there is like something to that, especially for treating people with PTSD or people like at the end of life. Like I think there's validity to that. That's what the research says.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it's like the thing is that where this can go really wrong is like when somebody doesn't have the ethical compass like as part of their therapy. Like it's really not about whether they're treating people or not. It's like they see somebody who's like easy to take advantage of, I think is what it kind of comes
Yeah.
down to. And it's not that somebody is like stupid and that's why they go into, that's not true at all. Like the reality is just is that like every single person is at vulnerable stages in their lives where the right thing comes along and it looks like the right thing, and your response to the whole world is like a little shaken, and people end up in these groups sometimes. Like all it takes, like every cult, there's like a psychopath, like a literal psychopath, like malignant narcissist, destructive person, who is will stop at nothing for their own, to meet their own needs, you know. And
Yeah.
they don't, it's always, you know, a person that doesn't have any empathy, and these, when you have groups like that, especially sometimes these people are really clever, um and you just, a system is created that it's sort of, it's somebody who's probably had a really traumatic childhood. You find with a lot of cult leaders, like especially between the ages of like 2 and 4, um and then like the response, the way to feel safe is to like sort of, it's just an unhealthy way of dealing with things. But a lot of these people, like I would say, um like there's also like people out there like that are just kind of like psychopaths that you got to watch out for.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's the world is kind of a dangerous place.
Oh yeah, it's 100% a dangerous place. How do you think cult leaders typically manipulate and control their followers?
Well, they find the thing that the follower is like looking for. Like there's always some sort of come on, like um you know, like I just mentioned Nexium. Like they're like, hey, we can cure this Tourette's disorder or whatever. Like all the things that they said they could do, like to give you control of your life, and it's stuff that like to certain people was like really enticing. Like, you know, there's all these actors and actresses in that group. It's that same thing with like Scientology. Like you can get ahead, like if we're like, if you can't relate to the religious stuff, there's probably like no chance you would join a religious, not impossible, it does happen, but most of the time, like they're just, there's some kind of thing that they see. I mean, it's a con game. Like it's always a con. There's always you know, a con, or some ruthless con artist. Um, but sorry, I want to back up there because I feel like I
Yeah.
just talking and maybe missed the exit there. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
But you were asking, how do people, or what do cult leaders do to entice
Yeah, how
their,
do cult leaders typically manipulate and control their followers? Like, how does it impact the followers' mental well-being?
well, there's some kind of hook. There's always some kind of hook, and something that isn't really about what they're selling. Like it's what they're selling is a con, but it doesn't look like a con. It doesn't, especially if you're in a place. A lot of times, people, like most people who join cults, if you look at like what's going on in their life, like right before this, you see a lot of times it's like horrible breakup, or lost their job, moved to a new city where they didn't know anybody, just went to college for the first time, and is like away from home. People who are going through like serious changes in their lives, and that's like the kind of that's what a cult leader looks for,
Mm.
um, is that kind of stuff. And but I mean, I guess the reality is just that like every single group is unique in their own sort of like what the hook is.
Yeah. Can you discuss any specific things that you've experienced where cult involvement led to someone experiencing severe psychological trauma.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the people that are willing to talk about this are brave. I feel like it's getting a lot less stigmatized because like now there's a Netflix special every couple just weeks, it seems, like on a cult or something. And I think that it's healthy that more people are talking about their experiences. But I've seen, yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who went through who have it's been a while and they've been able to process everything they went through, but that went through very difficult stuff. I mean, and I'm like, okay, so here's like one little anecdote is like I go to therapy every week on Thursday, right? And my therapist was in a cult for a few years and went and became a therapist when she was trying to figure out what happened afterwards. She's like one of the most well-adjusted people I know, but she was in this like totally abusive system. Like people do. I mean, I see people who have done a lot of like work. But I've also talked to people who have like recently gotten out of cults or something, or maybe they're kind of on their own after leaving, and they've been gaslit so bad that they don't even know, like they're unsure what they should say. Um, and yeah, I see that. It's just kind of like it's a whole process like on the other side.
Mm.
But I see people in, I guess, different states of like reckoning with what happened. And times people have to do this is just something like Alexander Stain would tell you, is like sometimes people are forced to sort of do things that they don't want to do, that they would never do because they're in the system, and that's something that people have to reckon with.
Yeah.
Um, and like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing if you're in an abusive relationship and you like are trying to defend yourself or something, and now like you're a crazy person. Like that's what like the cults do. But yeah, I
Mm.
mean, it creates like it's just these are systems that just they feed on it and they produce it themselves.
Interesting. I think it's called deprogramming when you've left a cult and you're trying to, you know, figure out what is right and what is wrong. And I think that's really interesting that they use the word deprogramming because essentially when you join a cult, you're being primed and programmed to be a good follower or a good whatever role that they're assimilating you to become. Um,
Here's something I gotta bring up if we're talking about deprogramming, is
yeah.
like these days, okay, so these days it's called exit counseling, like the people that do it, because the like deprogramming was invented by this guy who I think is legendary. This guy, Ted Patrick in the 70s. And the original like deprogramming was they would go and they would kidnap somebody who was in a cult, and they'd take him somewhere and they would like lock him in a hotel room. There are stories about like people screaming in hotel rooms, and like the police would knock on the door and Ted Patrick would be in there and he'd be like, "Hey, she's in this cult." And like the deprogramming experience was often traumatizing for the people who got out, if especially if they didn't get out. It was like a remarkably successful tactic. Like Ted Patrick did this over 2,000 times. But like it was sort of like sometimes it could be like scaring somebody out of the group, which which doesn't happen anymore today. I mean, it's possible, but like I don't see it. I haven't heard of it happening like in decades.
Mm. That would be terrifying. I don't know if I would like that.
Well,
I,
I think on the whole, it was like it didn't get scary, but it got into like all of a sudden, like these people started doing it, started emulating what Patrick was doing, and then you have no clue what their ethical compass is.
Mm-hmm.
So you know you might be saving somebody from a traumatic experience, but you also might be like influencing a traumatic experience too.
That's a really good point to make. It also makes me think of those women who got out of, there's like lots of stories, but there was a pair of women who got out of a polygamous, you know, Mormon cult, and I think they were in Utah, and they really wanted to start rescuing their sisters. And so they would kidnap their sisters essentially and just show up when they knew that their sisters would be outside, and like grab them and like essentially gag them because they knew that their sister would scream and that would ruin everything. And
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I guess like I don't want to endorse um deprogramming exactly, although like I will say like sometimes you hear stories like that and it works. Like and that is interesting to me. Like I find it interesting. I don't at all am not responsible enough academically to like I don't have the knowledge to speak to like the ethics of this.
Mhm.
I know that it can go wrong. I've seen it, like there's stories from the 80s and stuff. But it is just an interesting thing because it's yeah, there's even the process, like the whole cult system idea of like what's going on, like there is so often you find trauma in there.
Mm. What role do you think isolation from family and friends play in the mental health of cult members?
Well, it's, I mean, like brainwashing is like it's literally like something that happens. It's like this has been studied. Like we know that it's real. It's like coercive control is now recognized in some courts, undue influence, like, and it's all like that's part of it. Is it's not that like people go crazy or whatever. It's that you kind of you feed somebody one form of information and you take away the stuff that like the isolation. You take people away from anything that could possibly be helped. Like don't watch TV. A lot of these places like don't like information is wrong. Like Linda is notorious for being like don't trust any information. Like it's just information. And when she isolates people from the the sort of healthy relationships, and sometimes that isolation is also like they will like plant like a kind of plant like a false memory, like they if you strip somebody of like the kind of like any healthy relationship or like good information, and you do it for long enough, and you're feeding them like one brand of information, like you can make people think things that are like ridiculous. Like in this cult, I'm putting out a video today about this group, and the guy like convinced all these people that he had gone to hell and beat up Satan and stolen these sins that he was committing, and like, hey, now like God has these sins and they're okay. And like if I told you that, you would be like, that's crazy. Like, I know that's not true. But these people, like, just they were isolated into this world where that was like, it kind of made logical sense, like, even though it's nonsensical.
That's very interesting to point out. Um, because from my experience, the church that I was brought up in, which is First Baptist Dallas, I think it has a lot of, I can't say it's a cult, but it has a lot of cult tactics. And one of them really was that you we all are sinning, right? And all sins are equal. in the eyes of God, but not all sins are equal in the eyes of man. And that was something that they like brought up like all the time. So that not all sins are equal in the eyes of man.
Yeah,
Eh,
it's like I mean, these are the same groups that are like, if you masturbate, like you are going to burn
yes.
for eternity.
Oh yeah. It's not fun. And one of them was, which is like trigger warning for those out there. When I was 15, I was raped in the church basement. And I tell people this because I've healed and I've moved forward from it. Like it doesn't make me cry anymore. I've done like mushrooms over it and talked to an actual therapist, a licensed therapist over it and like fully unpacked everything. But I told my church counselor what had happened. And she essentially used my story in a sermon to talk to young girls about how they should be aware of where they are and who they're with. And like, she didn't mention my name, but I knew it was my story. And I felt just so attacked and shamed and felt so upset. And I was, raised in like deep in the pits of purity culture where now because of what had happened to me, I felt less than. And a few weeks after that happened, we had, I don't know what kind of sermon it was, but they separated the boys and the girls. And I think I've like cognitively blacked out most of it. But I remember something being brought up about like sex between a man and his wife, and that, the wedding day is for the woman, but the wedding night is for the man. And I remember saying, well, that's ridiculous because sex is just so that you can make babies. That's what I said, because that's all I knew that sex was for. That's all I knew, right? That's how I was raised. And the lady was like, no, sex is pleasurable. And I was like, no, it wasn't, is what I said. And I essentially outed myself, which is like vibes. But I was raped. So that's not even, in my opinion, sex. That's rape. And I got ostracized by all the girls around me because they're like, you should have saved yourself for your husband. And I had no way to defend myself because I didn't want to say that, oh, this guy in our church who you guys are all friends with, like assaulted me and raped me because I felt scared. And I left the church and it was very hard because all of the people who I thought were my friends essentially abandoned me or ostracized me. And their moms told them not to hang out with me because I guess they told their moms what happened, but they didn't know the full story. And it sucked, man. It sucked.
Well,
And
I would say like just from hearing that too. I mean, like this is like somebody did something terrible and then you're kind of stuck in this bad system that makes people fall in line with like terrible unsupportive ideas. Like they're doing like, and maybe the person who did this, like I don't think they were like they meant to be attacking you, right? But they're in a mode of thinking that is like that is toxic,
mhm.
and is the exact opposite of what was needed at that time. And it's sort of like, yeah, I mean I guess like, I mean that's terrible, and but I guess like the purity stuff though kind of screws with your head too. Like if when you tell people that like that sex is like that sex is just like for this like distinct purpose, when literally like everybody thinks about sex all the time. And it comes out in really terrible ways sometimes, like obviously. um but yeah, it's I mean it saddens me too, because it's just like that's just like it had that happened in maybe a different environment, the response would have the adult would have responded like an adult and not put you in that position.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because purity culture is not just in the Christian faith, it's in the Muslim faith, it's in the Jewish faith, and it's really rooted in misogyny. It's
Mhm.
rooted in women or femme presenting humans being seen as chattel or seen as something to be owned, possessed, controlled. And I think that in itself is a cultish like belief to control and suppress another human being or limit their potential. And
Yeah, there
it's
are there are like there are a lot of things, I guess, like the word that is like is new is like culty, like it just it comes up a lot more than it used to. And people recognize this stuff more and more as we become more exposed to it, that like there are elements to all kinds of things that like fucking go to Disneyland and tell me it doesn't seem culty to you. But yeah, there's institutions where it might not check off all the boxes of a cult, but there's like some heavy like pressure going on, or heavy like the just like total control of people doing things they might not otherwise do, or just like having a million rules for that don't need to be there for some reason.
yeah, another one was growing up, like alcohol. Like alcohol was seen as a sin where, I grew
That's
up.
equal to murder.
Yeah, that's apparently equal to murder, which is crazy. And my cousin just got married, which yay, party. I'm so happy for her. And she
Congratulations to her, yeah.
mentioned, yeah, so happy for her. She mentioned her husband, now husband, works in a church. And she mentioned to the family, she was like, oh, by the way, it's going to be a dry wedding. We are not going to have any, we're not going to serve alcohol, and there will be no alcohol allowed on the premises because my husband signed a covenant. And my fiance was like, he signed away his rights to drink alcohol?
That's high control.
What? And she's like, yeah, he can't be seen drinking alcohol or around anyone who has alcohol. We're like, what?
It could be for the best though. I've gotten in some trouble from drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I it could be for the best. It like I mean, alcohol, yeah, there could be people that may have problems with alcohol
But
and
yeah,
may not respect.
when you have a blanket policy like this is the way things go, and the reality is just like every single person is different, and just because like there's so many absurd rules in some systems that that lead to, and then everybody sort of buys in, and then like if you do this thing there's going to be all this fucking shame that's heaped upon you. And that can be, I honestly think that like that can be traumatizing like in and of itself. Like it's not that you did something that you have like a moral issue with, it's that like you're presented with the morality of some system that is like arbitrary, and you get shamed and gaslit if you do anything, and it's like to keep people from sinning so they all go to heaven or whatever.
Something that like
um
a term that was used growing up was a lot
Bullshit.
is like you can't cause someone else to stumble. Like you got to do this so you can prevent someone else from stumbling. Or if you wear this, you're causing someone else to stumble. You may not like find yourself attractive in it, but like say like the shoulders thing. That was like a big thing in my church growing up because, I'm a bigger person. Like don't consider myself a girl anymore. I'm more an entity as it were, and I have a bigger chest. And I started developing really early. And growing up as a kid, it's hot, it's Texas, 105 degrees yesterday. So we
Uh-huh.
wear like tank tops. And I was not told by my parents or anyone in my family, but at church, that I was causing little boys to stumble by just wearing a tank top.
Yeah, it's your you are the reason that this person is thinking about like sin or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
apparently.
for just like having your own body. Like I mean that's ridiculous. Like and you see, I mean you see that just all the, I mean it's like sort of like the old adage, like where somebody will be like, it's like they'll hear a story and they'll go like, well, what were they wearing? What was she wearing? And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you when you ask questions like that? Like what adult would ask a question like that? But that's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like that's intrinsic, it's kind of built into our society, like um which is, I don't know, like I do hope that something like these kind of ideas, like thinking about like the really big picture, are like on their way out in the long term. I hope. I mean, I have to hope for humanity that things will get better. Otherwise, it's hard to function.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. That's so real, especially with, everything that's going on in politics.
Holy
Like,
shit.
not to get like super political, but the fact that, Donald Trump got shot, that's horrible. Like, I don't appreciate, oh, Gigi is okay. I don't appreciate violence in any form. I don't agree with it. But his new running mate said that any form of abortion, like for no, like any reason,
Yeah, even in
is
the case of even in cases of rape and incest, he does not support it. Like that guy has the most like draconian ideas about like a woman's autonomy. Yeah, I mean, I read that today too.
it made me want to throw up because speaking as someone who has a uterus, I've obtained it somehow. I don't know. I was born with it, I guess. But I don't want this uterus personally, like, fuck. But if I say I were to get pregnant and the baby dies in utero, I can't even get an abortion to get it out unless my life is in danger because
Because of
it's abortion.
like this fantasy this guy believes in, like because of the like this idea, the guy believes that cells are human beings when they're not. I mean, it's silly that you police the world with like, yeah, I mean, but you also touched on something there too. Like you were born with a uterus. Like, did God give that to you? Like, did God burden you with this thing? It's I mean, it's silly that we can't like follow science and the social sciences that are pretty clear about this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you won't find a legitimate social scientist who would ever agree with this guy. Um, but yeah, we're stuck with some bad ideas, and again, hopefully, I hope that they progress out of our world at a certain point.
I really hope so too. And like the whole cult of Trump, I'm just like gonna out myself right now. I went to Trump's inauguration, not out of my own free will. I was still a minor. My parental units, my dad, bless him, my dad's family's from Jamaica, and he thought it would be the best idea ever for us to go to a president's inauguration. And the whole spectacle of Trump was like, that one. We're going to that inauguration because Obama's inauguration, when that happened, was way too expensive because it's the first black president and like ticket prices were crazy high. And so my dad had been, we were homeschooled a lot off and on because I have learning disabilities and so do my siblings. And so my dad's like, okay, I'm going to teach you guys about government. What is a better way to teach you about government than the presidential inauguration? Okay.
Here's the deal though, is that like I visit cults sometime. Like sometimes I visit cults. And like I would, if I could go back in time and it was an option to go, I would have went. Just
Yeah.
to see how fucking weird it was.
It was
Like
crazy. I remember all of it. It was insane because them, like, the propaganda that there weren't a lot of people there is a lie. There were thousands and thousands of people. Like, we were crammed in like sardines. It was so crowded. The footage that they shot and they showed on TV was from days prior, because we were there for like 5 days, like 2 days before it, day of, and then 3 days after. So we also went to the Women's March after it, which was also insane. But there were a lot of people there. The crazier part was my dad decided to, like, the first vendor he saw, like, that was selling Trump stuff, he was like, we're buying all of it and I'm decking you out. He's like, we're gonna blend in. Ah! It was like, it was so crazy that my little siblings, who were also minors at the time, they were so decked out head to toe. I think they got on CNN, just like little kids, just like dancing on like the mall, whatever it's called, the long grass, in their
Yeah.
Trump regalia. They were just playing, and they got on CNN because my dad had decked us out in it. And he was like, we're gonna assimilate and we're just gonna be a part of this experience. And
It's kind of like a front row seat to the end of the world,
it
in my
really kind
opinion.
of felt like it. It really did. Like, the amount of signs that were just heinous, ridiculous. I don't even know. We were on that Trump train and, there was no getting off. And it was interesting because, like, since, his inauguration and everything like that, people in my family, which again, immigrants from Jamaica, were all so fascinated by the spectacle of Trump because he's a performer. He's a performer and he
Yeah,
spoke
and he's
to,
charismatic as hell. Like that's the
yeah,
thing, is like a lot of people don't realize. Like I say this to people, that like Trump is a charismatic authoritarian. He shares literally all the same DNA as every cult leader I've studied. Um, like they people don't realize that, like they think because he's not charismatic to them, which is like it's something that is unique for everybody, that he's not like charismatic. And I will tell you, as somebody who observes this stuff from the outside, that guy is charismatic as dick. Like he can do all kinds of like he says these things like the Trump quote that is my favorite is like, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any followers. He says this at a rally or whatever, and everybody goes crazy. Like, yes, you totally could shoot somebody, murder somebody, and we wouldn't leave you. That's charisma, like to be able to pull that off. Like if I said something like that while I was bartending, I'd be a problem.
yeah, it would
I'd
be
have
a
to
big
explain that to
problem.
my boss.
Yeah, it's the cult of Trump. And, I'll like out myself again. I thought it was hilarious. Also, my brain was not fully developed. It still kind of isn't. I'm 24. My brain definitely wasn't fully developed then. I thought it was hilarious. Like, everything that was going on, I was just having the time of my life. And I think a lot of people get sucked in because of that, because there is like this group mentality of, oh, Trump is going to take care of us. Oh, he's speaking to the heart of, you know, all of us who don't have a say or haven't been represented in politics, yada, 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 yada bullshit. And
Well,
no, honey, he's a like billionaire who has never struggled a day on his life. Small loan of $1 million.
I think that also like MAGA, like Make America Great Again, is like that's a fine sentiment in a way. Like it's total like gaslighting these people. Like, hey, we're gonna make the country great again, but we're actually gonna make it way worse. The whole like the entire political system is gonna be disrupted from the moment this guy steps on the RNC stage in 2016. Um, like, but the idea of like make this country great if you just like at the surface level, it's like, yeah, I can agree with that. Like, I want to make things great. It's just that like in practice, it's well, in practice, there's a whole lot of fucked up shit that used to happen in this country that's happening again, most
Mm.
notably Roe.
Mm.
Um, but like, yeah, the like there's also just this reality that like we live in the future is kind of scary and history's happening all the time, and people don't like it. I don't like. There's a lot of stuff about like the modern world that I'm like afraid of. But I'm not going to be like, well, we should roll Roe back. If that's your idea of like making the country great again, him and evil Mitch McConnell um blocking Merrick Garland, like I mean, there's just like there's these effects to it, and yeah, it's there's all kinds of culty shit. You know what else is culty though? Since we're on the subject,
Yes.
is this idea that we're all supposed to. We've been told, this is way off topic, and I'm sorry to say this in your show, but it's the idea that we're being told like as a group, like, don't talk about that guy who's like losing his damn mind, obviously, where you watch him and he has dementia, and
Oh,
we're not
Biden?
supposed to talk about it. We're just supposed to be like, follow the course into hell, and like the gates of hell are open. There's this man who like couldn't run a McDonald's, who's fighting against Satan, and for power of like you know, we could be like Nazi, like, I'm not kidding, like, is this guy deports immigrants like he's saying, like he wants to, it will look like Nazi Germany.
Mm.
um and but at the same time, yeah, the like the folks I usually uh place my bets on are acting insane, and it's insane that we're supposed to talk about how it's not happening, and that is so culty. Like the
Mm.
Trump thing is super culty. He is literally has every characteristic of a cult leader. He reads the Bible better. He loves the Bible more than anybody else does. He has better words than anybody else does. He respects women more than anybody else
Oh
does. He
yeah,
said that.
totally. Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just I care about all of us. Like, I think we should just try to do a little, like, right now, you look at the folks in power in America, it's like we should try to do better than this.
We should
Um,
definitely try it. We need to do better than this. And with the political situation, it's just agitating the economic situation as well. Because we're all struggling so much. Like never before has the younger generation been, you know, like so low on the totem pole versus like the 65 and up, like 35 down. Politically and also economically, we're struggling so much. And if I have to hear another like older lady tell me that I should just get a job or I should just keep working harder or I should not put things on credit cards, like,
yeah, you lived in a different economic world, that's true. But I mean, I guess like the overall thing to me is just that it's like terribly disenfranchising.
mm-hmm.
Like, if you, which is the way it is, like when you're sort of, you're in a culty system but you don't want to be there anymore. um is like, it's incredibly disenfranchising to be told things by these folks who are supposed to have our best interests in mind and don't, but we're supposed to go along with it. It's like they, like, I guess I was talking about before, just like these systems of control, um these mechanisms of control. Like, I think that like this is important stuff to talk about, because we all find ourselves kind of in situations that are like this, even though we oftentimes don't recognize them.
Mm, very
um
true.
I do have to go pretty soon.
Okay, I have like one final
Okay.
question. Okay. My final question to you would be, How can public awareness and education help prevent recruitment of individuals into cults and support those trying to leave?
Honestly, I think that the big change that needs to happen is that, like, when I was growing up, there was like I was in like middle school, right? And these people came in and they're like, if you do drugs, you're gonna fry your brain and like nobody's gonna like you. Like this kind of stuff. And it is important that people are aware that drugs are dangerous, right? But what we do not have right now in our education system is that same fucking thing, but somebody coming in and talking about abusive relationships, controlling relationships, and cults. Like, because this stuff is so unbelievably common. Like, here's how you know if the relationship you're in, like if somebody's controlling you, these are the warning signs. Like this stuff, this is, if this is going on in your family, like this is something to know about. This is something to talk to your guidance counselor about. And if people just had kind of an awareness that, like, because the warning signs are typically they're kind of uniform of kind of what's going on. Again, I would refer to like what Alexandra Stain has to say, because I think she's the best with these kinds of questions. But like model something that was like, this is what a abusive relationship is, or this is what control is. These are like, this is how bad it can get. Like, look at Jonestown, look at 9/11. Like, this is like serious stuff that I don't know why we don't have like just do it in like social studies or something for an hour, and people would be less likely to find themselves in these groups, find themselves in these kinds of relationships. Like, I guess that's what I think should be done. I will also say that there's a foundation called Safe Passage that is specifically built for children who come out of cultic groups, to sort of stop the system from like creating another Linda or
Mhm.
something like that. I think that that's important, is to, there's just a reality that we know that we have to protect young people from experiencing the kind of trauma that can leave you like one of the people I study, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
um, that it's important to education is just really important. I mean, always like it's kind of like uh knowing about like if knowing about birth control, whatever.
Mhm. Hey, education is the cornerstone in figuring out what is and isn't true. Because if we have a concrete idea of the world and the different orders of things, we're not liable to be duped by other people or controlled easily by
Well,
other
and
people.
people need to realize that like the thing that drives me the craziest is that I see or hear, a lot of like these cult documentaries come out or whatever, and or I put out a TikTok video and people are like, what kind of idiot would ever fall for this? And it's like, dude, that like it literally could happen to you. I want everybody to know that, like, yes, like if you don't know what this stuff looks like, it could totally happen to you. If you think that you're way too smart to ever fall for something like that, like maybe not right now, but at another stage in your life, if things go sideways and you're not thinking as clearly as you maybe are in this present moment, it could totally happen to you. And that, like, yeah, we need, people need to have like that, even that little bit of education, that
Mhm.
like this is a phenomenon. Like, the world is kind of a scary place and people will prey on you. They'll even prey on something like your trauma, which people like, which is like the opposite of anything that we find acceptable if you're a thinking person. But yeah, I guess that's kind of that's kind of all I have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Syrian. Um, shout out your social medias one more time.
Okay, on TikTok, I'm the Cult Hunter or at Syran Warner. I'm at Syran Warner on YouTube. Syran spelled Syran, Warner Warner. I'm on Instagram, I should say. I'm Free Melissa Parker, and that's kind of like the social stuff that I use.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and
Thank you.
sharing what
It's
you've
been
gone
great.
through.
It's a really interesting show that you have, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate it. In the description, guys, I have I have so many resources and also a little tidbit for anyone who may think that they might be in a cult, like a little checklist of things that you can do to start assessing your situation and how you can start to leave the cult. And I have many different resources that can actively help you. So we love you so much. You take care of yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
If you're watching us over on YouTube, hello. Here are our memes of the week, carefully curated by those amazing people over on our Discord server. Now let's get into those memes. At the end of every episode, we spin our wheel of emotions to learn a new feeling and correlate it to trauma. So, we got our wheel. All right, the main categories are as follows. We got sadness, disgust, anger, fear, surprise, and happiness. Those are our main categories. Let's spin the wheel. Ooh. Whoa. It landed in between submissive and rejected. So insignificant, inadequate. Having any sort of trauma makes us feel insignificant or inadequate a lot of the time, like 90% of the time. And it's not our fault. It's the way that society portrays people with trauma. And as far back as my brain can go, I immediately go to Vietnam. When the Vietnam War happened and soldiers came home, which it was, uh, you know, needless war. It didn't need to happen. They came back very disturbed by what they saw because I know this because, my grandfather took pictures in the Korean and in the Vietnam War. He was in the army. And according to my family members, he came back a totally different person. And because he was a totally different person, trauma changes you on a cellular level, not just, emotional or spiritual. It changes you, changes the way that your body does its normal everyday processing. He was no longer able to provide for his family for a bit. And so that directly correlated to his sense of worth. When people experience intense trauma, which most people associate it with war, famine, disease, like something intense, it changes you. And society, especially capitalism, wants to see us as cogs in the wheel. And if, say, one of the cogs is not working properly or not doing as it should, it's going to get replaced. But you, my love, are not a cog in anyone's wheel. You are not a spoke. You are more than that. You are not a machine. You're a person. your soul. Trauma should not make us feel insignificant. When we're going through trauma, we need to be embraced, not rejected. We need to be held, not isolated. We need to be enveloped in love and compassion and understanding, because that will help us heal and that will help us move forward in our lives. Trauma is not who you are, it's what you go through. And when we go through these intense situations and we don't know what to do with it, trauma becomes all encompassing. I want to give you this quick resource. It is 988. It is the crisis lifeline number. If you ever feel like you're in a crisis or you're going through something extreme and you don't know where to turn and you feel like you can't turn to people that know you, please call or text that number, okay? And please connect with us over on our Discord. It's free, it's anonymous, it's peer support, because that's what we need when we're experiencing hard times. We need to communicate. We need to be around people who are in similar situations or who have been in a similar situation and have gotten through it. I just want to thank you so much for being here, for listening, for watching, for listening to my little cat's jingle. And I want to appreciate the work that, goes into watching an episode like this. I know cults are really fascinating, but trauma itself is something that everyone experiences in one form or another. And you're not alone. And you don't have to go through this alone. Okay, guys? And if you like this podcast, please hit that like button, subscribe, share the show with your friends. And if you want to support the podcast, we have a Patreon. Different tiers can get you a bracelet like those, which are handmade crystal beaded jewelry made by me, Grace. Yeah, any support helps us out a lot. So if you feel compelled to, please like the episode and share it. Okay, guys? And please join us over on our Discord server. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life in spite of your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise again from the ashes and be filled with peace, hope, love, joy, and understanding. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye. And here's a little BTS. Gigi has a pink tail. Did you say bye, everybody? She's like, oh my goodness. All right, bye.